Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And we, of course, are a part of the Believe Podcast YouTube network. Go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe, especially a subscribe. Get in there right now and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, we're at 3,600 subscribers. Again, we'd like to be at 5,000 here at some point here in the near future. Tell your friends. Again, like and subscribe. Be sure to leave comments down below. And so on and so forth. So today, I was kind of conflicted about what to do. You know, this is part of the reason that I guess I'm learning about the new format, the YouTube format versus the radio format. You know, when it comes to the free agent boards, where we go over where everybody fits and who would be a fit for the Titans and who wouldn't be a fit for the Titans and everything else that we used to do when I was on the radio, but we're doing it kind of more directly now. There's a part of me that loves the fact that we're not breaking for a commercial every 15 minutes. I mean, I used to hate when I would do a mock draft or when I would do the free agency day, and I'd sit there and I'd have to be like, all right, we have to take a break now, and then we'll come back. And when we come back, we'll get into telling you all, we have to reset for everyone that just got in the car what's what. We don't have to do that anymore. But there are two things that are the big stories today to get to. There is the free agency board for edge rushers, which I have right here in front of me. And there were the press conferences today for Gus Bradley and Brian Daboll. And I put up a poll and I said, what would you guys rather hear about? Would you rather hear about Brian Daboll and Gus Bradley's press conference, or would you rather hear me go over the free agent board? And I think it was like 52-48 in terms of people saying they want free agent board over press conference or press conference over free agent board. And then guy was like, why don't you just do both? And I'm like, I can, but the way YouTube works, I'd probably be better off. The way podcasting works, I'd probably be better off to do one show on the free agent board and one show on the press conferences. But the one thing I did say when I sat down with Braden and said, hey, you know, if I bring my show to 440 Sports, I want it to be my show. And I want it to be the show that I've always done, granted with, you know, a little change here or there. But I want it to be a daily show of the main topics and not, well, you know, let's do one topic on here and they get the same people to watch again on another topic over there. So today we are going to do both. We're going to go with the free agency boards. We're going to do the press conferences. Now, people in the Titans YouTube chat were all worked up today when it came to me not being at the press conference because I got into the YouTube chat myself. And people were saying like, Stillman's been kicked out. And I'm like, it's not that Stillman's been kicked out. It's that I spent all morning this morning going over free agent pass rushers. And I'm like, do I take the time to go to the facility to ask two questions of a defensive coordinator who doesn't even call plays? And I just didn't think it was worth my time. And I listened to the press conferences and they were fine. But what is more important to me and what should be more important to you than the coaches are the players. And where do you get players? Free agency. So we're going to start on the free agent board. Yesterday, we went over wide receivers and we went through the board. Today, we're going to do this with the edge rushers. I think as I go along and doing this, I think I'm going to probably get a little bit better or feel, you know, kind of bring this down a little bit. But let's just get right off to the top of the board. And again, edge rusher is an absolute need for the Titans. Now, it does seem like they will be able to get an edge rusher, one of the top three guys between Arvell Reese, Ruben Bain, and David Bailey with the 4th overall pick. Because if Fernando Mendoza goes number 1, then one of those three guys has to be available at 4. It's simple math. But when it comes to how I want to build the team, I've already said this. I want to draft best player available all the time, and we have to compare the draft board, and we have to compare free agency boards, and we have to say, okay, if we need 2 edge rushers on the team, is it going to be easier to get 2 in free agency, or do you have to rely on the draft because there's nobody out there in free agency? For instance, there's nobody out there in free agency at left tackle. So if you're going to want a left tackle, you're probably going to have to go in the draft. Edge rusher, there is a market to be had. So let's start with the top of the board. The top of the edge rusher market. Number 1, Trey Hendrickson. He is also PFF's number 1 overall player in the free agency class. Trey Hendrickson spent last year with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's 31 years old, had a PFF grade last year of 82.9. Over the last 3 years, Trey Hendrickson has played 41 games out of 51 possible. Last year, he had a core muscle surgery after 7 games in 2025, and he is expected healthy in 2026. I do not consider Trey Hendrickson to be a high injury risk. When it comes to the strengths and the weaknesses, strengths led the NFL in sacks last year, in 2024 with 17.5 and posted 17.5 in 2023. He had 4 sacks in 7 games last year, which is not bad by any means. Graded higher than 80. That is very good. Graded higher than 80 by PFF for the last 4 seasons and has had an over 85 grade for the last 5 seasons as a pass rusher. Over 90 on pass rush grades the last 3 seasons. He is an incredibly high motor player and is somebody who is considered to be a team leader. So that is Trey Hendrickson. Those are his strengths. His weaknesses, he's 31 years old, and he's coming off of major surgery that cost him the last 10 games of his season last year in Cincinnati. PFF projects a contract for Trey Hendrickson of 1 year and $21 million. If Trey Hendrickson gets $21 million, that would be a steal. What are we talking about here? So I put Jared's contract to the side. And yesterday I talked about, maybe I'd have to give more for Shaheed. So here's what I'll say when it comes to the Jared contracts and the free agent board. Instead of, this is what I for sure am giving this guy, what I would say is, this is what I think it'll take to land him, factoring everything in there. For Trey Hendrickson, again, PFF says 1 year, $21 million. For Trey Hendrickson, if you want him on the Titans, I think 3 years, $90 million, $55 million guaranteed. So that is $30 million a season, and you're basically guaranteeing the first 2 years. And before you tell me that's too much money, remember you guaranteed $55 million over 2 years to L'Jarius fucking Sneed. I assume you'll have to go to $30 million on Hendrickson, which would put him in the second tier of pass rushers. That would put him in that Josh Hines-Allen category. That would not put him in the same category as Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, TJ Watt, Max Crosby, and Danielle Hunter. So when it comes to Hendrickson, if you want him on the Titans, I think it'll cost 3 years, $90 million. That's $30 million a season. And I'm going to guarantee 55, which means I'm guaranteeing the first 2 years. That is the top guy on the board, period. Again, he had 4 sacks last year, which is not, by his means, very good. He had 17.5 the year before that and 17.5 the year before that. Number 2, Odafe Oweh played with the Baltimore Ravens and the LA Chargers last year. He's 27 years old. He had a PFF grade last year of 75.5. In the last 3 years, he's played 47 out of a possible 51 games. So he is very dependable. 7.5 sacks with Baltimore and the Chargers in 2025. So 7.5 sacks, not bad last year. 10 sacks with Baltimore the year before. Plus 70 in PFF grades over the last 3 seasons, plus a 70 pass rush grade over the last 3 seasons. He's entering his prime at 27 years old, and he has had pressure totals of 51, 55, and 54 over the last 3 seasons. The one weakness I have with Oweh, and there are 2, but the one that I have is he did not force a fumble last year. Joey Bosa, who is on the board, forced 5 fumbles last year. I mean, if you're going to get to the quarterback, I want you to force a fumble or two. And then when it comes to Owe, his grades are very good and his production is solid, but the kind of money that Owe is probably going to cost in the free agent market is probably worth that of an impact sacker. And I'm not convinced that Owe is that. PFF says they expect 4 years, $77 million, $40 million guaranteed. So that's about 16 and a half, if the math is right, 77. I think if you want to get him, again, this is not what Jared would give him, but this is, hey, if we sit there in the boardroom and we decide we, the Tennessee Titans, are going to get Odafe Owe, I think it's going to cost you $100 million over 4 years. That's $25 million a season. And that would put him right below Nick Bonito, who's an all-pro, but ahead of Montez Sweat in terms of the pass rushing hierarchy. I mean, that's expensive, but again, this is free agency. So if you want Owe, think 4 years, $100 million. So we've got $90 million over 3 for Hendrickson and $100 million over 4 for Owe, and the guarantees are the exact same. 55 over 3 for Hendrickson, 55 over 4 for Owe. Number 3 is Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips played with the Miami Dolphins last year before being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. He, too, is 27, like Odafe Owe. Had a PFF grade last year of 74.2. Now, over the last 3 years, this is where it gets complicated with Phillips. 29 out of 51 possible games. He had an ACL tear in 2024 and an Achilles in 2023, but he did play 17 games last year. He did have a solid grade last year of 74.2 in a rebound season, and he had 76 total pressures last year. 76! So he does get to the quarterback. Weaknesses? It's obvious. Injuries. Jalen Phillips was a dominant pass rusher before the injuries at Miami, with the ACL and the Achilles. And I remember when he went down with the Achilles, and I thought, oh, man, that's a really big player for them. PFF thinks for Jalen Phillips, 1 year, $15 million. Again, I think that's kind of a prove-it deal, but a nice little prove-it deal. I'd say if you want him, 3 years, $60 million. So you're looking at $20 million a season. I'd guarantee 22. So I think it's an overpay for Phillips, but again, this is who you want. That's the top 3 on the board. 4 is Boye Mafe with the Seattle Seahawks. He's 27 too, just like the other guys. PFF grade is 70.3. He is available 48 out of 51 games over the last 3 years. His defensive grade strengths are over 70 in each of the last 3 years, according to PFF, and he only missed 6% of his tackles last year. As I was doing the work on Mafe, I really struggled to find big-time stats. PFF says for him it's 3 years, $49 million with $30 million guaranteed. I need a guy who gets sacks. His weaknesses: had 2 sacks last year and 4 starts for the Seattle Seahawks. 44 pressures last year compared to 58 and 23 under Pete Carroll. 20 career sacks in 4 seasons. And half of those, 9, came in 2023. I can't give him big money. I put 1 year, $10 million. Again, when we're talking about, hey, edge, I can put him in the second tier of guys that we're about to really get into. But when I talk about shopping in free agency and trying to get some impact players, I don't see Boye Mafe as an impact player in that regard. Then there are 2 guys I put in red, as in, I'm not even sure, should we get into this? Joey Bosa in Buffalo, Khalil Mack with the LA Chargers. Mack is considering retirement. I assume Mack will stay with the Chargers or he'll retire. Bosa, last year, did have a good season for Buffalo, a solid season for Buffalo. I don't think Joey Bosa is going to play for the Titans. I think Joey Bosa is a 1-year deal guy at this point in his career because of his injury history. You'd have to pay a huge suck tax in order to get Joey Bosa. I don't think it's a fit for either side. Number 7 on the list is Dre'Mont Jones. We know Dre'Mont Jones. This is where I feel like we're getting into the secondary pass rusher, where now you're just plugging a need. You're not going out and getting an impact player, but you're more so plugging a need. Dre'Mont Jones last year played for the Titans and the Ravens. He's 29 years old. Last year, PFF grade 64.7. Over the last 3 years, he's played 52 out of 52 games. Reliable. He had a career-high 7 sacks last year between the Titans and the Ravens, averages 6 sacks a season, and 51 pressures last year were a career high, and he was with the Titans in 2025, and I think most people will say, when it comes to Dre'Mont Jones, most people will say that Dre'Mont Jones was very reliable. I think that's important. Now, he has not had a PFF grade over 70 since 2020, and he's only forced 2 fumbles in his career. They think 2 years, $20 million, $13 million guaranteed. I'll go with that. I don't know if people are going to jump on the first or second day of free agency to essentially guarantee a year and a half to Dre'Mont Jones, a solid but not special pass rusher. Number 8 is K'Lavon Chaisson. Last year kind of broke out in New England. Still didn't have a great PFF grade at 59. He's 27 years old, played 48 out of a possible 51 games over the last 3 years, so he does play. And he had a career-high 74 pressures and 12 sacks last year, including the playoffs, where K'Lavon Chaisson was very, very good. He's a former first-round pick, but, man, he has really sucked outside of last year in New England. And even last year being his best year, his PFF grade was still sub 60, and he averages 4.8 sacks per season, and his pass rush grade wasn't very good. Neither was his tackling grade. His tackling grade in 25 was 26.8 and 29.8 in 24. They think 3 years, $45 million with $30 million guaranteed. That's $15 million a year, and you're going to guarantee the first 2 years according to PFF. I'd say I'd give him $10 million a year for 2 years, and I'd guarantee $15 million of it. So I'm probably not getting K'Lavon Chaisson because somebody out there would pay the money on K'Lavon Chaisson before I would. Kwitty Paye is number 9. Kwitty Paye was with Indianapolis last year. He's 27 years old. Bad PFF grade at 59. But there's an interesting thing about Kwitty Paye that I have him on the list. 48 out of 51 possible games over the last 3 years, so he plays. Kwitty Paye was a much better player in 2024 and 2023 than he was in 2025. He had 8.5 sacks in 23 and 8 sacks in 24. Why am I bringing up 23 and 24 for Kwitty Paye? Because Kwitty Paye's defensive coordinator from 2022 to 2024 in Indianapolis was Gus Bradley. So Gus Bradley has experience with the player, and the player played better under Gus Bradley than he played last year under Lou Anarumo. So Paye was not productive whatsoever last year with Indianapolis, and I think that may drop his production. Career low PFF grade, and he was asked to play in coverage more than he ever was under Gus Bradley. PFF says 2 years, $20 million, $13 million guaranteed. How about this? I'll go 1 year, $12 million. So instead of the AAV of $10 million for Kwitty Paye, I'll go $12 million for Kwitty Paye. And this is where we tell the agent, hey, let's get him back under Gus Bradley, where he's an 8.5 sack guy. Let's give him $12 million. Let's let him reestablish himself and hit the market next year. That would be my pitch on Kwitty Paye. And then finally, Dante Fowler Jr. of the Dallas Cowboys, 32 years old, so he is kind of an old pop-pop. He had a very good PFF grade last year of 77.6, and over the last 3 years, out of 51 possible games, he's played 51 games. Reliable. Played for Gus Bradley as a rookie in 2016, and he also played for the defensive line coach Aaron Whitecotton in Dallas in 2025. Career-high PFF grade last year, 77.6, 72.8 pass rush, and again, he plays 17 games a season. That's good. Only 3 sacks last year. So he's got a career average of 6.3 sacks a season. And yet, in 2024, he had 10.5 sacks. Kind of seems like an outlier. PFF says 1 year, $6 million. I'd go 1 year, $10 million. And this would be if Gus Bradley and Aaron Whitecotton were just banging the table as far as Dante Fowler is concerned. But not every player that I get in free agency has to be more than a 1-year option. There are going to be guys that need to be 1-year options. I've brought up Kwitty Paye. But I have a hard time with Dante Fowler saying, hey, let's just do a 1-year deal for Fowler and stick him out there. I'd like to get a guy that's going to be on this team for more than 1 year. So that's the board. The guys I have taken off the board. Hassan Reddick. Again, that him and Saleh experiment. Not Saleh's fault necessarily, but that did not go very well. Jadeveon Clowney, off the board, I think for obvious reasons. Cameron Jordan, Brandon Graham, and Derek Barnett, they're all old pawpaws. So let me say this again. There are two subsets of the board here when it comes to free agent pass rushers. And the one I would go with when it comes to the pass rushers are the big money guys. And to me, there's really two guys I'd be interested in. Hendrickson and Owe. And then the other guys, which to me would be plug players. So if I sign Dre'Mont Jones for $10 million, or I sign Kwitty Paye for $12 million, or I sign those kind of, that is, hey, for 1 year, 2 years, you're going to play out there. I may draft David Bailey with the 4th overall pick, and I could still put him there, but I can go into the season saying Kwitty Paye is going to start at one essentially defensive end position, and somebody else is going to start at the other one. You guys pump your chest about cap space and all this money that the Titans are going to be able to spend. This is where it takes me to Trey Hendrickson. I'm just going to say this when it comes to Trey Hendrickson. PFF expects him to sign for 1 year and $21 million. I'd be surprised after that extended holdout last year with the Cincinnati Bengals, in which the Bengals would not budge, if Hendrickson takes $20 million when the top of the market is in the $40 million range. And I'm not saying that Trey Hendrickson is the same as a 27-year-old who signs with his original team, but over the last 3 years, Trey Hendrickson has been up there with Myles Garrett as essentially the best sacker in the NFL. You're the Titans. You're not very good. Over the last 2 years, you've been the worst team in ball. I heard your assistant coaches today talk about how everybody around the league just loves Tennessee. Do you buy that? I don't. I would make the Godfather offer to Trey Hendrickson. This is the one guy that if I'm the general manager and we're putting the board together, I am looking at him saying, I want him. And I'm going to tell you why. Because sacker is the second most important position in the NFL to quarterback. So I would love an elite quarterback. The second thing is elite sacker. Hendrickson will not cost you any draft capital. He will be a straight-up free agent unless the Bengals tag him, and I'd be shocked if the Bengals are going to pay him $30 million a year. And I think the Bengals last year would have been willing to trade him, but nobody was going to trade good draft capital in order to get Trey Hendrickson. They were going to pay him, but not for good draft capital. And I don't think anybody was interested in paying Trey Hendrickson and giving up good draft capital. So he's going to be a free agent. There are going to be teams that want Trey Hendrickson. Because Trey Hendrickson, even though he got hurt last year, had 17.5 sacks the year before that and 17.5 sacks the year before that. I understand there is a risk when it comes to the injury with Trey Hendrickson. I also think the reason Trey Hendrickson might play for you is because even though Cincinnati had all intentions of being a Super Bowl contender last year, Burrow and Chase and Higgins and Hendrickson, the one thing Hendrickson was clearly upset with was a perceived lack of respect. That's what the money represents. For a lot of people, money doesn't necessarily represent, wow, now with my $30 million contract, I can buy this, which I couldn't buy with my $26 million contract. But it's about the respect. It is you respect Joe Burrow enough to make him the highest paid quarterback in the league at the time. You respect T. Higgins to give him a big contract. You respect Jamar Chase to give him $40 million. You don't respect me. That's why when it comes to Trey Hendrickson, I'd bump into his agent at the combine next week, and I'd say about $90 million over 3 for Trey. 55 guaranteed. We'll give him 40 in cash in the first year. I've always said this. If you want a house, the market will dictate what you have to pay if you just want a house. But if you want a specific house, not one that's on the market, not one, but you are driving around town and you see a house and you say, that one, I want that house. As in, there's a one house, you have to overpay. If somebody knocked on my door today and said, hey, would you sell us your house? I'd say no. If they said, we'll pay you $4 million, I'd say yes. So you have to overpay. And as much as $30 million a year is a lot of money, I'm not convinced that it's that much money. Because again, as far as the NFL is concerned, the top pass rushers make $40 million a year. I'm offering him $30 million. I would be willing to go up to $34 million a year in order to get Trey Hendrickson on a 3-year deal. And I'd up the guaranteed money too. Because I think about what Trey Hendrickson represents to the Titans. And again, I recognize the risk of him coming off of the core muscle surgery a year ago. And I recognize the risk that he's 31 years old. Trey Hendrickson is productive. Trey Hendrickson is reliable. Trey Hendrickson is considered a leader. Trey Hendrickson has skins on the wall in the National Football League. He's led the league in sacks. He's been an All-Pro. He's played in a Super Bowl. When he walks in, there is not going to be a question of who are the big dogs in this locker room. There's him on defense, and there's Jeffrey Simmons. And I think about the idea of signing Trey Hendrickson, pairing him with Simmons, and drafting Arvell Reese or Reuben Bain or David Bailey. And I think that right there gives you a formative defensive line. And the truth about the NFL is in today's game, because the rules have changed, in today's game, defensive backs do not matter as much because they cannot be as physical with the receivers. So the only way to stop a team on offense is to either sack the quarterback or get him to turn the ball over. And the way to do that is with pass rushers. Simmons, Hendrickson, and then you pick Bain, Bailey, Reese, whoever's there. I think that's a pretty formidable pass rush. And not only that, I did the math the other day. If I cut Lloyd Cushenberry and I cut L'Jarius Sneed and I only get $8.5 million from Sneed because $7.5 million is guaranteed for injury, and we know L'Jarius Sneed is hurt. If I do that, I walk away before Ridley, before Pollard, if we have those discussions. But I walk away with the ability to spend $161 million in free agency this year. Take out 30 or so for the rookie class, and I can spend, my math is $131.2 million in cash. $40 million is not the end of the world for an impact game-changing pass rusher. Now, if that core muscle issue flares up, the Titans are fucked. And I understand it. And if at 32, Trey Hendrickson is no longer an elite edge rusher, you're in trouble. All of these things are risks. This is a risk I'm willing to take. I would not have been willing to take the L'Jarius Sneed risk 2 years ago. You all know that. Hendrickson is a risk that I'm willing to take. Because again, Owe, younger guy, not as productive at sacking the quarterback. And can you imagine what that would say to the Jeffrey Simmonses of this team? If you add Trey Hendrickson and you look at both of them and say, all right, big boys, you go get it. And I talked yesterday about wide receivers. there is not a Trey Hendrickson on the wide receiver board, because the only guy who's anywhere close to the kind of player that Trey Hendrickson is George Pickens. He's probably going to get tagged in Dallas, and he's crazy. Hendrickson is not crazy. So let me just say, once again, when it comes to free agency, and there are a lot of positions the Titans have to get figured out. They've got to get pass rusher figured out. They've got to get receiver figured out. They've got to get center, because I'm going to cut Lloyd Cushenberry out. They've got to figure out right guard, where Kevin Zeitler's a free agent. They've got an entire cornerback room they need to replace. They've got a couple of safeties I think they'll need to get, and they've got a tight end they're going to have to go get. That's a lot. I am willing to splurge on Trey Hendrickson, the number one pass rusher on the board and the number one player, according to PFF, on the free agent market. And again, I don't even know where PFF came up with that 1 year, $21 million. That's crazy. Again, I'm thinking you want Hendrickson $30 to $35 million a year, and I'd spend it on him. You got to spend it on somebody, don't you? Why not spend it on a guy who sacked a quarterback 17 and a half times 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and last year, again, had a PFF grade of 82.9 before getting hurt, which is a one-off for Hendrickson, who is not a consistently injured guy. So if Amy were to tell me, we can't spend that kind of money on Trey Hendrickson at 31 years old, then maybe we could have the OA talk. But I would look at Trey Hendrickson and basically say, what's the price? Now, I'm not going to pay you 40, because you're not going to get 40 anywhere else. But I will pay a suck tax. So if that means I got to get up to $34 million a year and I got to guarantee you 2 years, I'll do it. I am banging the table for the Titans to be aggressive with Trey Hendrickson. The second thing I would do as far as the free agent pass rushers are concerned, and I went to that second tier of guys after we got past Joey Bosa and after we got past Khalil Mack. So this is Dre'Mont Jones, K'Lavon Chaisson, Kwitty Paye, and Dante Fowler. Dante Fowler, too old for me. Now, again, these are probably only going to be 1 year deals, so how important is Dante Fowler's age? I get it. And if Aaron Whitecotton, who coached him last year in Dallas, and Gus Bradley, who was his coach's rookie year in Jacksonville, both said to me, GM Jared, we love Dante Fowler, and Dante Fowler will be great for the room, and Dante Fowler will be a great rotational pass rusher for us, and we think he'll be great for guys like Jalen Harrell, and maybe even a Devandre Sweat or whatever. If that's the case, then maybe I'd be interested. But again, that group, Dre'Mont Jones, Kwitty Paye, and Dante Fowler, I'm not interested in K'Lavon Chaisson. That group, I'd look to bring in one of those guys on a 1 year deal. So I bring in one of those guys on a 1 year deal. Again, think about 10, 12, 15 million in that range. I bring in one of those guys, and I bring in Trey Hendrickson, and I'll pay him $40 million in cash this year, with a signing bonus and a base salary. Again, the average will be 30, but the cash this year will be 40, and the guarantee will be 55. And if I've got to raise the guarantee, I'll do that. If I've got to give him a bigger signing bonus, I'll do that. But I think Hendrickson is that good of a player. I want to come out of free agency with Trey Hendrickson at one defensive end position, and one of those guys, Kwitty Paye on a 1 year prove-it deal, Dre'Mont Jones bringing him back, Dante Fowler, one of those guys on the other end to go with Simmons. And I still will draft the best player available with the 4th overall pick, even if it's Bain or Bailey or Reese. So that's our free agent board at the pass rushing position. Again, I told you yesterday when it came to the wide receivers, I'm kind of torn on what to do with Calvin Ridley. I told you, well, Pickens, he's off the board. Pierce not going to get to free agency. Mike Evans is old. Deebo Samuel is old. Jawan Jennings has issues. Shaheed is fast, but he's not a number one. Romeo Dobbs, there's not a receiver that I looked at that I'm like, overpay. Now, I like Jalen Naylor yesterday, but I'm not saying let's go make Jalen Naylor the highest paid receiver in free agency, or I am saying that with Hendrickson. Hendrickson is that kind of player. I wish there was a tight end out there I could pay. like Trey Hendrickson, given the Titans' need and how much I think a tight end is important for a young quarterback. I wish there was a tight end out there that I could go out and get. There's not. I want Trey Hendrickson. I am circling and I'm saying bring him in. And then we'll figure out the secondary, and it's going to be tough because we got to get to the corner board. And, again, I think they still need more help at safety. I can't rely on Kevin Winston. Guy's always hurt. But I'm going all in on Trey Hendrickson, and just let me say this. GM Jared would be willing to pack his bags and get his ass fired if Trey Hendrickson doesn't work out. There has to be risks that you take. This is a risk that I would take. Now, to the press conferences. Saleh and Daboll, and then we'll get into your reaction, and we got some other NFL stuff. First, though, I want to tell you about the presenting sponsor of this program. That is Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be, or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more by visiting happyhiller.com with professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, and they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. Hiller will take care of the customer on every job, every time, and I know that because I use Hiller at my home. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, presenting sponsor of this program and a proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Also, leave a comment down below. Your thoughts on me saying go all in on Trey Hendrickson. Now, to the press conferences. Today, Gus Bradley met with the media and Brian Daboll met with the media. Their introductory press conferences took them long enough, by the way. And I listened and I watched the stream, and I love the fact that people, because I commented on the YouTube and people were like, Jared, you need to be there, or why aren't you there, Jared? Or, oh, his key card doesn't work. First of all, it's not a key card, it's a code. Secondly, my code does work. It's a defensive coordinator who doesn't call plays and an offensive coordinator who's not going to really say much. I think I'd rather do the research on the free agent board than sit back and take the time to go there and then ask a couple of questions and so on and so forth. And so I stand by my decision. Now, TDG's mad. He said, you should have been there. That was an important press conference, the introductory press conference for the coordinators. We need to make a new rule. If you're going to criticize, you have to face your accusers. First of all, I do face my accusers. Let's not kid ourselves. I went to the Borgonzi press conferences. Now, I'm not going every day. I'm not a beat guy. But going to the introductory press conference, there were two things I took away from this. The first is Brian Daboll talking about Cam Ward. So Buck asks Brian Daboll the question, a very generic question about the fit in Tennessee. And Brian Daboll turns this into all of the touch points that he had surrounding Cam Ward last year, even though at this point he wasn't really asked about it. Here's what Brian Daboll said.
Yeah, I'd just say it felt like the right fit with the right people. Obviously have a relationship with Robert dating back to the New York days, but his vision of what he wants to do and how he wants to do it, Mike and the vision that he has, and then ultimately Cam was a big factor. Have a lot of confidence in this young man. I'm sure I'll get asked about the pre-draft process last year, which was about this time. Had a lot of touch points with him, meetings, 30 visits, going down to Miami, dinner with him and his family. So there was a good relationship built up leading up to the draft. So I look forward to work with him. I know he's in the building rehabbing. April can't come soon enough to get going on the offensive installation part of it, but have a lot of confidence in how he played, both at Miami, Washington State. And then he had a whole year under his belt playing in the National Football League and getting accustomed to the speed of the game and the timing. And that's not an easy thing for quarterbacks. So I just felt like the right fit, Buck, and look forward to being here.
Just felt like the right fit. Now let me tell you about how much I love Cam. Let me say this. I believe it. I have no reason to think that Brian Daboll is lying about how much he loves Cam Ward. And in fairness, the guy that the Giants lost their pants over the year before was Drake May. And in year 2, Drake May was almost league MVP. I buy it. I buy that Brian Daboll loves Cam Ward based on how interested the Giants were in moving up to pick Ward, based upon the fact that he talked about all the different touch points and all the work they did and everything else. And I think Daboll probably does love Cam Ward. And Brian Daboll could have gone other places to be an offensive coordinator. He could have sat on his ass and collected a check from the Giants. And instead, he chose to be here with Robert Saleh as the head coach, a guy he's never worked with before. So I buy it. I think he does love Cam Ward. Here's what I would think about that, though. You know, I was very skeptical of Cam Ward coming out, not because I didn't see the highlight plays, because I saw the highlight plays. The same kind of highlight plays he made last year at times in the NFL are the kind of plays he would make on the Miami tape that I would see and I would think, oh, shit. Like that right there, that is, woo, can't coach that one. And those are the same highlights that people put out there of Cam Ward after a game where they say, hey, I know Tennessee's terrible, but Cam Ward can be special. Watch this throw. And it's the Io Manor touchdown against the Rams, which was a special throw. And it's the kind of play you can't coach. I believe offensive coaches can be their own worst enemies at times, especially offensive coaches when it comes to the quarterback. Because what I think offensive coaches will do, and I did this with Anthony Richardson. Now, I knew Anthony Richardson was a project, and I thought there was going to be a path that they had to take as far as Anthony Richardson was concerned, and I don't think Indianapolis did that, but Anthony Richardson might have sucked no matter what. And I'm willing to say that if I was the general manager in Indianapolis, I might be packing up my bags because I would have drafted Anthony Richardson, and Anthony Richardson so far has sucked. But I wonder if the way I felt about Anthony Richardson has had an effect on the way that I feel about Cam. Two totally different people. Cam has way more experience in college. Richardson has much better measurables as far as the NFL is concerned. But the thing about Richardson is he did things at Florida, and he's done things in the NFL where I look at it and I think, holy shit. This guy with this size and that speed and that arm, and oh my God. But because I lived through the Anthony Richardson failure, sometimes I think, you know, I like the guy who just completes his passes. Would I love to have Mahomes? Yeah. But again, when Mahomes got drafted, Andy Reid came out and said, he's not ready. He's going to sit the bench. And then Reid developed him. When it came to Cam, the Titans told you that there were similarities between Ward and Mahomes, and then they went out and did nothing the way Kansas City brought up Mahomes. I think Daboll probably watches those special plays that you can't coach when it comes to Cam Ward, and I think Daboll probably said, I can coach him, because that's what coaches do. It takes an experienced guy who lost with Cleo Lemon at quarterback and Nick Saban to say, I've never coached bad players to play good. I only coach good players to play better. I think coaches look at the talent that Cam has. Cam has talent. And those wow plays just completely override the fact that in that same Chiefs game where he made a great throw on the sideline, he threw a ball that hit the right guard in the head. I've never seen that before. So that, when it comes to Daboll, I buy it. I buy that Daboll loves Ward. I buy that Daboll probably had a plan in New York for Cam Ward. If anybody's going to be able to do it, it's Daboll because of his experience with Josh Allen. But I almost wonder if Daboll has gotten suckered in on the same thing that I think a lot of people outside that don't watch every snap have gotten suckered in on, which are those incredible highlight reel Twitter throws that are like, oh my God, did you see that throw? Yeah, and his QBR was 22 for the game. So I buy it. I buy that Daboll loves him. The second thing is Gus Bradley. Oh, by the way, I loved how TD asked about the mechanics, and Gus Bradley talked about how he liked the way Cam throw, or he likes his athleticism and the way he throws, or something like that. Did not answer the question from TD, which tells me Brian Daboll knows we're going to have to hammer down these mechanics with Cam Ward. Gus Bradley was asked a question by Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports, and I absolutely loved the answer. The question was basically, hey, Devandre Sweat is a 3-4 nose tackle. You guys play a 4-3. Does Devandre Sweat, who is not fast, have a role on your football team? Gus Bradley, take it away.
To be honest with you right now, I mean, we're talking about staff. We're going through scheme. We're, giving the scouts a good idea what each position looks like. Had conversations. We're really excited about all the guys. And that's just, I've always believed that when you come into a new situation, the previous staff has done a good job. There's obviously some good things that have taken place with them. Our job is to continue to add to what they've already built and take it to another level. And also, I think that's very important as coaching staff. We give the players a fresh start. I think in the years I've done it, when a new staff comes in, that's what they're hoping for. Man, I just hope I have a fresh start, that you don't talk to everybody in the building, get all these notions of who I am and what I'm all about, and then you base your opinion off of that rather than just meet me, watch me play, and then make judgment. And so I'm really trying to stay in that world. I think Robert is too, to try to protect that part of it, to say, let's get to know them. We're excited about everybody in the building, and let's give them that fresh start. And let's see what takes place.
Okay, so are you guys interested in Devandre Sweat? Does Devandre Sweat fit the scheme? Gus Bradley? Hey, we're not there yet. I want these players to know they have a fresh start. The former coaching staff did a very good job. That was 1 minute and 2 seconds. Do you know what he said there? No. Devandre Sweat does not fit what they're trying to do. And I will tell you why. This is such great coach speak 101. He's asked a question about a player specifically. Again, does Devandre Sweat fit what you're trying to do? The answer is no. And instead, he just talks in circles.
To be honest with you right now, I mean, we're talking about staff. We're going through scheme. We're, giving the scouts a good idea what each position looks like. Had conversations. We're really excited about all the guys. And that's just, I've always believed that when you come into a new situation.
That is a veteran coach speaker right there, which is what Gus Bradley is. I mean, he was a head coach 10 years ago. And he's been a coordinator, and coordinators have to talk, and he's been a play calling coordinator since then. The answer's no. Now, I do think there's a place for Devandre Sweat on this team. I am not jumping to move on from him. And I say this because the Titans back in the 2000s, the Jim Washburn days, which is what I think this defense is going to look like. Javon Curse and Kevin Carter on the ends, Albert Hainsworth and somebody else, whether it was Jason Jones or Josh Evans, may he rest in peace, or John Thornton, or Robert Smith, whomever next to Albert Hainsworth. And then later it was Van den Bosch next to Albert Hainsworth. I believe that's what this is probably going to look like. I do think, while I wouldn't draft a nose tackle or pay a ton of money for a nose tackle, and if somebody called and wanted Devandre Sweat, I think I would be interested in dealing him. But I think there is a place for Devandre Sweat on this team. And that is without assuming that he's going to lose weight, because he's been in the NFL for 2 years and he hasn't done it yet. Here's the way I look at it. I am not saying right here and now that I'm taking a pass rusher with the 4th pick. But just looking at the board, I think it's pretty likely I'm going to take a pass rusher with the 4th pick. I've already told you I'm going to sign Trey Hendrickson. I've already got Jeffrey Simmons. I'm going to sign another pass rusher, a la Dre'Mont Jones, who's going to play that 4-3 defensive end spot. Devandre Sweat can still play on first and second down for this team. Devandre Sweat can still play in goal line packages. Devandre Sweat can be a guy that I look at and I say, hey, big fella, you're out there. I need you to eat two bodies because Hendrickson's coming off the ball and Simmons is coming off the ball and Bailey is coming off the ball. And big boy, I need you to take out the center and take out the guard because now Bailey's one-on-one with the right tackle. Hendrickson's one-on-one with the left tackle. And Simmons is one-on-one with the guard. Now, he's not going to play 3rd and 19. He's not going to play in a 2-minute drill. And I'm okay with that. He's already on the team. So, is he going to be a big part of the defense? No. If somebody was going to offer me something decent like a top 100 pick for him, I'd take it because he doesn't fit, and they know it. But that doesn't mean that he can't be on the team. The Titans had a guy back in the old days by the name of Henry Ford. And Henry Ford was a former first-round pick out of Arkansas. If you look at Floyd's first-round picks, they were all really good. Steve McNair, Eddie George, Javon Curse, Keith Bullock, Albert Ainsworth. Kevin Dyson was good until he got hurt. And then there was Henry Ford. And one year I said to the old man, because I remember Henry Ford at the end when he was with the Titans, and Henry Ford was just a big old fat defensive tackle, a rotational player. And I looked at the old man and I said, the hell happened to Henry Ford? You drafted him in the first round. All your other first-round picks were good. What the hell happened there? I mean, even Pac-Man, who was a total a-hole off the field at times, was a great player. I'm like, what happened? He's like, just couldn't get him to stop eating. He just kept eating too much. And so I think that's how I look at Devandre Sweat. He's not going to stop eating. And you're never going to get the value of the 38th pick out of him. And all the people that were involved in that horrendous decision have all been fired for the most part. And so I'm cool with it. I'm cool with, hey, Devandre Sweat's a rotational player on the defensive line, but I want Devandre Sweat to understand his role. I want him to get in there, and I want you to eat up some of these offensive linemen, and you let Simmons, and you let Hendrickson, and you let Bailey, and you let Dre'Mont Jones, and you let those guys go to work. But no, he doesn't fit the scheme. Also, I just think it is so funny. It's like asked about Simmons, and Gus Bradley's like, oh, he's great. And meanwhile, on the other side of it, it's like, what about Sweat? Well, I don't want to get into specifics. Oh, okay. I did find it fascinating that Brian Daboll brought up Ridley as a part of the offense. Pollard as part of the offense, because it does make me think, you know what? They might actually have serious interest in keeping Tony Pollard. Which does take me to a couple of NFL items I want to hit on. The first is Kenneth Walker III. So yesterday, Adam Schefter reported that the Seattle Seahawks do not plan on using the franchise tag on Kenneth Walker III. That Seattle's got a bunch of free agents that they're going to want to pay. They've got to give Jackson Smith and Jigba a huge contract. And so Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP, according to Adam Schefter, is likely to hit the free agent market. And the interesting thing that I believe with Seattle is I think Seattle is one of the smartest organizations in the league. Now, that's easy to say after they win the Super Bowl. But the reason I feel like Seattle is a smart organization is because they don't march to the beat of Twitter's drum. They operate by what is the best for us. They don't care about the optics. Mina Kimes threw a huge fit after they got rid of Geno Smith. They didn't care. They did their work. They moved on from Pete Carroll when a lot of people were surprised thinking Pete Carroll's pretty good. And they went out and hired Mike McDonald. John Schneider's a veteran general manager, and he's made mistakes. But unlike other places where a general manager makes a mistake and they kick him out the door, they've let John Schneider learn and work through it. That's why all the teams that needed quarterbacks last year, all of the stupid teams, all passed on Sam Darnold because they buy into narratives. They have the owner saying, no, Twitter says Sam Darnold sucks. The one team that needed a quarterback last year that does not have its head up its ass was Seattle. And look what they did. What I'm fascinated by, though, is Seattle going to be able to reload for next season? Because they've already lost Clint Kubiak. They've already lost their quarterbacks coach. Mike Macdonald is a defensive coach. He already swung and missed with his first offensive coordinator hire. He hired a guy from San Francisco. Guy's never called plays before. Is Sam Darnold going to be able to pick up where he left off with a new offensive coordinator, with a new play caller? Rashid Shaheed is a free agent. Kenneth Walker is a free agent. Boye Mafe is a free agent. They're not going to be picking high this year in the draft. Can Seattle reload? The Rams went through this. Aaron Donald retired. Andrew Whitworth retired. Cooper Kupp got old, and they reloaded. Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Puka Nacua. They figured it out. Belichick and Brady reloaded. I am fascinated. I think Mike Macdonald's a very good coach, but this is where we're going to see if he's a good coach. And finally, there is a conundrum as far as the Miami Dolphins are concerned. A serious conundrum in Miami. What are they going to do about Tua? Now, I would love to say, just for the record, I told you so. Miami. I think I was on Sirius the day that Tua and Jordan Love signed for these huge contracts, and I was like, I wouldn't have done it. And I know Jordan Love's played okay, but I would have made Jordan Love prove to me, no, it wasn't a heater at the end of the year. No, Jordan Love's legit, which I think he might be. Tua, I never believed in. So the Dolphins have a huge conundrum on their hands when it comes to Tua. They owe him $55 million guaranteed this upcoming season. There is not a team in the league that is just going to happily take Tua off their hands. Tua could start in the NFL this upcoming season if the Dolphins released him and somebody who didn't have a quarterback signed him for the league minimum while he still collected his $55 million from Miami. But for Miami, do you want to just light $55 million on fire? So now people are wondering if the Dolphins can do what the Texans did years ago after they swung and missed on Brock Osweiler. They traded Brock Osweiler to the Cleveland Browns and gave up a second-round pick in order to facilitate the deal. The Cleveland Browns, who had a terrible team and a bunch of money, decided to buy the second-round draft choice. And that brings us to the Titans. People are looking at the Titans and saying, you know what? Tennessee could be the spot for Tua. Miami attaches a draft pick. Tennessee has all that money they can spend. They pay Tua the $55 million. They get a good draft pick in return. And Tua backs up Cam Ward and then gets released and goes back into free agency. Here's what I would say to that. I don't think I can do that and plug all my holes. Because I do want to be better next season. You know, I don't know what the expectations for Titan fans are next year. I said they have to win 6 games in order to justify their existence, but I don't know what the expectation is. In the NFL, you can turn teams around quickly. And the ability to spend in free agency, just like the Patriots did last year, is exactly why teams are able to do it. And I've already said, if I'm the Titans, I am going to pay Trey Hendrickson a bunch of money. I am going to pay a second pass rusher. I am going to go get a receiver if I can in free agency, like Romeo Doubs, like Rashid Shaheed. Now, I might cut Calvin Ridley if I do that, so I kind of are just swapping out the money there. But I am going to, when it comes to the money, like I am going to sit there and say, all right, let's spend the money on players to be good next year, to compete in football games next year, to give Cam Ward the best chance to win next year. That would not involve spending $55 million of the $131.2 million that I am allowed to spend on Tua to back up Cam Ward. But I will say this. If Chad Brinker really is involved in the team's day-to-day operations, and it sounds like he's really not, but if Chad Brinker is in on the day-to-day operations and he still believes in draft, develop, retain, at some point the Titans have to create draft capital. If the Titans really are rebuilding, hey, fans, it's going to take time, but stick with us because we're going to rebuild this thing through the draft. Draft, develop, retain. If that's the case, if that's actually what's happening, well, at some point you have to do something to get more draft picks. And if you weren't going to trade Cam Ward, that was your opportunity to get more draft picks. You didn't do it. If you were going to say, all right, this is going to be a long rebuild, we're going to take it on the chin, then you're going to trade Jeffrey Simmons because he's in his prime. He's an elite player. He'll get you big picks in return. They're not going to do that. So at some point, you have to create draft capital if you're really going to rebuild the team. Draft, develop, retain. This is a way you could do it. I wouldn't do it, but it is a way you could do it. On the Dolphin front, here's what I find fascinating. Stephen Ross is like 85 years old, the owner of the Miami Dolphins. He was so obsessed with getting rid of Tua 5 years ago that he got suspended by the NFL because he went after Sean Payton and Tom Brady, both of whom were under contract. Payton with New Orleans, Brady as a player with Tampa Bay. This guy already went through a tear it down and rebuild from the studs 7 years ago. That was the tank for Tua season. What's the end game here in Miami? They're going to be god-awful this season. They're probably going to be god-awful next season. I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. Malik Willis was a good backup last year. He's not the answer. So, as far as the Tua thing, you screwed this up. When you drafted Tua over Justin Herbert, you screwed this up when you didn't land Sean Payton, and you screwed this up when you extended Tua. I have a hard time believing that the same guy operating a similar plan is going to have success the second time doing the same thing. All right, let's get to some of your reaction here today on the program. Loaded show, which I did enjoy doing. Again, I'm all in on the Titans going after Trey Hendrickson. I would pay, again, PFF says 1 year, $21 million for Hendrickson. I would go into the 30s in order to get Trey Hendrickson. Chris says, Hendrickson sounds great in theory. Would think they could get him for a good deal at this point. Don't think so. Remember, you have to pay the suck tax. This is something I want to remind people. This isn't just you, but it's all the teams who suck. In the NFL, this time of the year, people start to get really, really worked up in value. Calvin Ridley's an example of this. Calvin Ridley's a starting receiver. You're paying him $21.75 million. Is Ridley worth $21.75 million on the open market? Probably not. But if you cut Calvin Ridley, now you have to go get another receiver, and that guy might be just as good and might be more expensive. But it's all about looking at the numbers and saying, well, is he worth that much? You need a receiver. When it comes to bad teams, and there's a guy you want, or a guy you feel like you need, and in the case of Trey Hendrickson, I feel like they need Trey Hendrickson. You have to overpay. I was appalled last year at Tom Brady and the New York Giants. Tom Brady and the New York Giants had the opportunity to meet with Matthew Stafford. The LA Rams, for whatever reason, did not want to pay Matthew Stafford big money. That's their business, not mine. But the LA Rams said, okay, we're going to pay you $26 million in cash. The going rate right now for the Tuas of the world is $55 million. Go see what else is out there, and then we'll see if we can just do something. And I think they paid Stafford something like $40 million in cash last year, which is still a bargain for Stafford. Well, the Raiders sat down with Stafford, and I think they offered him between 90 and 100 million over 2 years. That's $50 million. He's not going to the Raiders for a $10 million pay raise. If you really want Matthew Stafford, you have to pay Matthew Stafford $60 million a year. Because now we're talking about a $20 million difference, and that is real. Years ago, CBS told the NFL, we don't want to pay any more money for this product. They had the NFC package, the NFC package, which was very popular at the time. Dallas, Philly, Chicago, San Francisco, Brett Favre in Green Bay, very popular package. And CBS said, we're losing money. We don't want to pay any more for the NFL. They were paying $220 million a year. The NFL just wanted to get CBS to $250 million. That's it. So they took a meeting with Fox. The same way Matthew Stafford took a meeting with the New York Giants and the Las Vegas Raiders. And in that meeting, Rupert Murdoch of Fox offered $400 million because Rupert Murdoch was convinced in order to make Fox a prominent channel on the dial, along with NBC, ABC, and CBS, he needed the NFL. Al Bundy and Bart Simpson are nice, but it's not the NFL. Jerry Jones and Pat Bowlen, who were negotiating the contract, were kicking themselves under the table because they couldn't believe $400 million. And after the fact, Rupert Murdoch was asked about it. CBS wanted to pay $220, and you were going to pay $400? And he said, yeah, because if we offered $260, then the NFL goes right to CBS and says, well, they're offering $260. We don't want to go to the Al Bundy channel, but they're offering $260. Okay, fine. They'll give us $250 the end. CBS isn't going to offer $400 million. And that's how Fox got built. Like, if there's somebody you want, you have to overpay. So when you say to me, oh, I think we can get Hendrickson for a good deal, I almost wonder if Tom Brady thought that with Stafford and was like, we'll give you $45 million a season. $45 million for the Raiders? No, you need to offer $60 million. Someone said, I'm glad you can pronounce Daboll's name correctly. Who can't? I guess I missed the inside joke on that. The Coach B says Will Levis has even more of those making something happen plays than Cam. I don't think so. I think Cam is a better player than Will Levis. I think it's closer than people would probably want to admit. I think they're probably in the same tier, but I think Cam had more wow plays than Levis, who did have some wow plays. I mean, that throw to NWI in the Falcons game was wow. But I think Cam had way more wow plays than Levis. And I think Cam's a better player than Levis. I don't know what's next with Levis, but I guess I wish him well. TDG says, we've always said wait until year 2. Year 2 of what? Year 2 for Cam? TDG, you were telling me let Rand cook. So I have a hard time with that one. That's it for us. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends to like and subscribe to this program. Again, we'll be back on the free agent boards. A lot to get to that we didn't get to today. Great show. Stillman and Company, 440 Sports. We'll see everybody live tomorrow at 2 o'clock on YouTube.